This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.
Welcome back, everybody. Lots of us dealing with lots of challenges. It's one of those challenging times, if you will, in our history. A lot going on. Just came off of COVID a couple of years ago. A lot of people dealing with anxiety, depression, dealing with some traumas. Now add a chronic illness to that and amp up those challenges. Who supports you with that? I found somebody. They are located in North Carolina. Chronic Health Counseling is the name of the practice. Wonderful people over there. Got a great team led by Angela Espin, who joins us on the program today. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Likewise. And you're very different in terms of where you help people with their mind, their body, the whole connection, and get them on the path to moving forward. But then you add the chronic aspect to it. And I think a lot of us don't realize that, or when it comes to a chronic situation, we just kind of accept it and we just keep moving forward. I always look at the movie Finding Nemo and Dory. Just keep swimming, just keep swimming, just keep going. But sometimes we forget that chronic illness can pull us down on top of the other things that we all deal with. And would you say, as we begin here today, that we all have stuff going on? Nobody's immune to it. When anybody says everything's fantastic, that they probably aren't being fully truthful in all. You think so?
Yeah, I do think that we live in a society where we're groomed really to just say, how are you doing? I'm doing great. How are you? Because nobody wants to oh, how are you doing? Oh, I'm miserable. I'm broke. I'm tired. I'm stressed out. I can't. So we kind of just, I think, mask a lot of the real pain that we're going through. I do think the younger generations are getting better at this, but I know for the Gen X generation and backward, it's very much your emotions don't matter. Be seen, not heard. Power through. Pretend like everything's okay, because as long as it looks okay on the outside, we're good here. So I do think we're walking around with a lot of pain, a lot of stress, a lot of trauma. I don't think we can, as human beings, cannot get out of life without having some type of traumatic experience. So yeah, I think in addition to all the things that are going on in our regular day-to-day life, we're getting sicker and sicker as a society. I don't know the numbers, but everyone seems to have something. Cancer diagnoses, I don't know what's going on with that, but it seems like we're lucky to get out of this life if we don't get cancer, where it kind of used to be our great Aunt Flo had some kind of lung cancer from smoking her whole life. So yeah, it gets very multi-layered, very complex.
Yeah.
But I think we do just kind of walk around like, yeah, everything's good here. But in turn, especially with chronic medical conditions that require daily attention, a daily stressor, that we just kind of deal with it and move on and don't really honor how hard it can be to live with it.
You've said
with invisible.
Some very impactful things here. Oh, everything is, but an older generation, what were the kids told? Children are to be seen and not heard.
Absolutely.
And we carry that around. And I'm not going to call that a trauma, but the things that we are exposed to as children, we carry with us. That being one of them. Now add a trauma. And the trauma could be, and we could do a whole podcast or 50 on traumas.
Oh, absolutely.
That we're dealing with. And yeah, I totally agree with you. Younger generation is okay talking about it, is masking down. And I believe that they set the pace a few years ago, we even call it 10 years ago, where quality of life is just as important as working, where an older generation was like, work, just keep going, just work, we gotta go. And that probably came from grandparents, the Depression, scarcity, that mindset right there. When we talk about you supporting people with challenges in addition to chronic disorders, what are some examples of those?
A lot of what we see are caregiver fatigue.
Wow.
So it's not just the person who's affected, but it's also traumatizing for the family members.
Hmm.
And it spans out. Now, something else you said, like the whole, I just want to go back to the being seen and not heard thing. I
Sure.
would argue that is trauma. That is
Okay.
emotional neglect. And emotional neglect is one of the more pervasive, impactful, negative traumas that I see in my practice.
So let's go there. Let's microscope coming out.
Sure.
Let's look at that. That one comment, and many parents have said that back in the day, and it's just the kids acting up. It's like, Jimmy, children are to be seen and not heard. It's just a comment. It's just a passing comment. However, I call that a little T trauma.
Absolutely.
Wow, I never even thought of it. I never even thought of that as being a trauma.
Yeah, if we think about, if someone was raised in an alcoholic or drug affected family, there's going to be emotional neglect and other traumas that go along with it. Someone raised by, I see this a lot, someone who's raised by a narcissistic parent, that would, no matter what you do, it's never good enough. That you have to look a certain way, you have to be a certain way because you are an extension of me. And so it gets very layered and complicated, and it's harder to pinpoint emotional neglect because it's hard to pinpoint something that's not there.
Yeah. Or you're not
So I'm going to
aware
plug
of.
Janice Webb. She's the expert on emotional neglect, and it's really interesting to see over and over and over, because a lot of adults that I get are about mid 50s, Gen X and older. And so what strikes me, especially with the older generations, is sometimes they have never talked about their traumas to anyone. And I'm talking severe sexual trauma, physical abuse, verbal, emotional abuse, those things. Because of that, be seen, not heard. If you don't speak it into existence, it didn't happen. And so I have one client who, she was in her late 60s and was very angry, bitter, came in just like all up, closed off. And so once we started unpacking the things that had happened to her, it's like, oh, no wonder you're so angry and upset. And but again, like kind of going back to in our society, the aging generation also is kind of right now not seen or heard. They're just kind of tucked away in a facility or living at home by themselves, carrying around all this trauma. So the other thing about that is the more adverse childhood experiences we have, the more likely we are to develop chronic medical conditions later in life because of the increase of toxic stress. So kind of going back to the emotional neglect thing. And say you have a child who comes home and they were bullied at school. And they're getting bullied, but their parents just say, oh, sorry about that. That's no big deal. Well, that child is carrying around not only what's going on at school, but also a parent who doesn't understand how important it is to address that. Not just, oh, I'm going to go to the principal's office and speak my mind and stand up for my kid, but how is that making you feel about labeling emotions? We say in mental health world, we name it to tame it. And the more specific we can get to labeling our emotion, the less power it has. So a lot of people that I see in my practice go through life, develop a lot of sometimes undiagnosable conditions, things like not undiagnosable, but harder to diagnose. So things like POTS, I'm trying to think of some other, but neurological disorders, and doctors have a hard time pinpointing what's going on because it's hypermobility in joints. I see a lot of that, Ehlers-Danlos, just very kind of bizarre disorders that you don't see kind of run of the mill. And then sometimes I have clients that are trying to get a diagnosis and can never get one, or they get a diagnosis and they can't be treated. And then so not only is that person carrying this suitcase of trauma, emotional neglect, whatever they have with them, but then we're layering on another medical trauma of either not being able to be addressed or something serious like cancer. Um, um, I mean, thank goodness that we have the medical treatment we have, but then that leads to another thing of our medical professionals and how they can unknowingly traumatize their patients. That might be for another day.
Wow.
So, and just real quick, I'll kind of mention that, as I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at age 6 back in 1979, before all the medical equipment we have. So it was one of those take your shots. I think I was saying like 5 shots a day, right? Blood sugars are all over the place. I'm a little kid. But then I go into the doctor's office every 3 months and they say, your blood sugars are too high. You're not eating well enough. You need to get more exercise. You need to do this. You need to do that. And we're little, and it's like,
I just want an ice cream cone.
Right? Yeah. Oh, I can get into that. When I first got diagnosed and I was in the hospital and they told me I couldn't have birthday cake because of my diabetes. I remember that 50 years later because I was told, no, you can't do that. And I'm wondering, well, why not? So, but in the medical profession, because they're so focused on numbers, treatment plans, want to get the sugars down. In type 1 diabetes or any diabetes, it's all about blood sugar, getting it down. But the message gets sent, you're not doing good enough. You're not helping yourself enough. You're a bad diabetic. We kind of make fun of that, but the good diabetic, the bad diabetic, you're not. And then if we're either going in and they're hearing that every 3 months, or even another way to cope is not going at all. We don't want to hear that stuff. And we're doing the best we can. So they make it our fault instead of, well, it's type 1 diabetes fault. It's like trying to fight gravity all the time. And so since the doctors are like, okay, well, we need to do this and tweak that and make all these changes, they don't realize, well, we have to go home in these bodies, right? We're the ones who has to deal with this every moment of every day.
It was like you were in a prize fight, and now go home. Now you're all beat up, but verbally from, you're not doing a good job. And then and you got this, and your levels are blah, 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 like, basically, child or adult crawling out of that medical office feeling beat up.
Absolutely. Not just with type 1 diabetes, but I think that can be true for most medical, because they're trying to fix us. Right? Or they want a treatment plan, medication out the door. You're feeling better. Your numbers look great. All right. See you later. And that's their job. I mean, that's what we pay them to do. And I'm so glad they're there. And there can be a little more work done on addressing the emotional needs, or just saying something simple as, I know you're doing the best you can. Let's work on this a little bit.
Yeah, how about a positive with a negative? Amazing concept that is, right?
I'm glad you're alive. How about that one?
You know what? We're transparent. I'll even share. It was 3 months ago. I get a call from the doctor. He's telling me, it's looking like stage 3 cancer. I'm like, what?
Excuse me?
That's what I said. And it was skin cancer. I've always had it, deal with it, whatever. This was an elevated level, different type. And I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, well, we took the scans and everything, and it looks like, in the lymph nodes there, and like, just figured I'm going to let you know. I'm like, my intuition told me this can't be right. And it turned out it was a mistake. But to your point.
Really?
Yeah, it wasn't. It was skin cancer. I had surgery. Yeah, kind of invasive, but it was all good. I'm fine now. But it was, a little bit of a rabbit hole jumping down. The reason I bring it up is, as you said, the emotional aspect of it. I still remember that phone call. I could tell you the time of day, where I was, what I was doing. And then even in the same phone call, actually, I take that back. We hang up. He calls back. He goes, yeah, see a little something on your leg there. Looks like something, you got something going on in your shin. I'm like, what? And I look down. I was like, looks like a pimple. It was nothing.
Yeah.
So, but the emotional aspect of it, there was almost none given. It was just, here you go. Have a great day. Oh,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Think that's kind of missing, and I understand it. And we value our health professionals, but the average is, I think, about 11 minutes with the doctor when you go in because it's like robotic. They don't even have time to be emotional or be friendly. Um, you said something before. I love it. Name it to tame it.
Mm,
Wow.
yeah.
Because in our minds, everything is so scattered. Like we're always thinking, and you can't even just get a grip literally on a feeling and emotion or whatever. I think that's fantastic.
Mhm.
We don't do that. We don't even think to do that.
No, we have these core emotions that we fall to:
Mm,
happy, sad, mad, depressed, those kind of things. But we
sure.
can really get further. For it really turns out to be a vocabulary lesson,
Yeah.
but in the more specific, because there's usually an emotion behind an emotion. So, for instance, I get
Hmm.
angry because my husband, and I'm making this up just for the record, I get angry because my husband's coming home late from work. He all of a sudden he's coming home at 5:30 instead of 5. And so why are you so late? Why are you so late? Well, really behind that is fear. I'm fearful that he's talking to another woman or
Right.
he's ignoring me or this or that. So behind it, fear even can be anxiety. I
Yeah.
feel uh, I'm just trying to think. I'm not good at thinking off the top of my head. Um,
Well,
but
abandonment.
deeper into
You feel like, don't you want to spend time with me? You'd rather be at work. There's another one. Yeah, I've had this debate. Now I want your feedback on it.
okay.
Anger is not an emotion in itself. It's always something else with it. It can't just show up as anger. There's always something else connected to it. What do you think?
Absolutely. Anger, okay, so as a trauma therapist, right, and we get a trigger, what we call, or a stimulus that
Sure.
reminds us of a trauma, there's the responses, which are fight, freeze, and fawn. That's the newest one. We're fawning over the person is another trauma reaction. So anger, right, there's something going on in the brain where that person gets triggered, right, to have some anger outburst. And it's usually not, and I'll use an example when my husband, he's an easy target. So, but come in and say, oh, well, what's for dinner? Right. Well, I can take that in a lot of ways. And my instant is, I don't know, what are you making for dinner? Right. That kind of anger feeling. Well, something's going on deeper than that. And usually in trauma, we're hitting on a what we call a negative cognition or a negative belief about ourselves that we hold to be 100% true. So when he's asking what's for dinner, what I'm hearing is, you're not a good wife. You're not good enough. So that's what I'm responding to. And then that goes deeper and deeper and deeper into earlier childhood stuff.
Yep.
And so I'm trained in what's called EMDR therapy. It stands for eye and movement desensitization and reprocessing. And that is based on, well, it's a lot of things, but on that negative cognition, that negative belief, I'm not good enough. So with your therapist, like for me in my training, we went back and identified that core memory where that got started. For me, when we looked back and analyzed it, it was the first day coming home after a type 1 diabetes diagnosis. I'm going to St. Patrick's School. It's St. Patrick's Day. I'm 6 years old, back out in the free world after 2 weeks in the hospital. So I go home after eating a cupcake. And my mom says, how was school today, honey? I said, it was great. I ate a cupcake. And she whipped around and started yelling at me, right? That's where I got that, I'm not good enough feeling, right?
You screwed up.
So,
You really didn't, but you did.
yeah, I didn't, but at 6 years old, I don't know what
No,
to,
I know.
I have to go back and look at that. So, through this type of therapy and addressing this trauma, and going back to because the what's for dinner really triggered that earlier childhood trauma. And then the whole suitcase of trauma so it looks like rage, right? It can look like that. But then when he comes back and later after processing and doing the work, he asks the same question. It's like, oh, I haven't figured it out yet. I'm not responding he's just asking what are we having for dinner? It's not an attack on my person.
Yep.
Right. So I do believe anger, especially for men, is because it's more socially acceptable to be angry than it is to be sad or depressed or confused or anxious.
It's cover up.
It is.
Yeah.
So being angry is a go-to. And yes, we live in a very angry society. And it gets very, very big and very complex. And then I'm over here like, we all just address your trauma. Like we can just live in a much better world.
I look at it this way, Angela, and we're just scraping the surface on these things called traumas, which in future podcasts we'll go deeper. But I'm blown away how we even can function when you think about all this stuff and those little things, that when you got bullied on the playground, that one-off could have been a series, but it could have been one time. And that has impacted you. One of those little T traumas could be a big T depending on, the kid and the situation, but on and on and on and on, all this other stuff that we internalize. It's amazing how we can even function.
And we don't. Sometimes we don't.
Yeah.
Like when we see all the mass shootings that are happening, that is to me, if one of these people came into my office or like after they get, they're incarcerated if they don't hurt themselves and and they were in my office, I would bet my last penny that I can find identifiable traumas that were never addressed.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Come on. What do you think at a scale to 1 to 10? 10 being everybody is addressing their trauma. Obviously that's not the case. What do you think we're at right now?
I would say maybe a 4. Maybe a 4.
Maybe. Yeah.
It's hard, and that's hard to say. But, okay, so here's my other take. Not everybody needs therapy. We can get through process on our own.
But everybody has trauma. Let's just put that out there.
Everybody has trauma. So not everybody needs therapy, but everybody would benefit from it.
Gotcha. Totally clear. And something you said before in your situation, with type 1, everybody has a relationship with food. So then there's something else layered on top of your situation because that changes your relationship with food.
Absolutely.
Starting as a child all the way later in life. So much going on. So, with
so
all
much.
of us. Yeah.
And then, and for type 1 specifically, it's easy for people in our social environment to minimize the impacts. Because we look healthy, we look fine. If you were to meet me on the street, you wouldn't think anything was wrong. I look like a healthy 50-year-old woman. So, but internally, there's so many complicating factors that go along with that. So, yeah, there is a lot to unpack, and that's just with type 1 diabetes. So I could go on for a while about that one.
and it can't be today because we're out of time.
Yes.
You run very deep in a wonderful way of helping us understand what's going on, how it connects to our past, a lot of it. Some believe all of it, and how we can pilot through. Now, you can help people in the state of North Carolina, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
How do we find you?
Several ways. My phone number is 704-517-2106. That's the agency number, but it also comes directly to me. If a person wants more information about the practice, they can email me at angela@chronichealthnc.com. If somebody wants services and just they listen, they're like, oh yeah, sign me up. They can email intake@chronichealthnc.com. We also have our website, which is www.chronichealthnc.com. But any of those ways, and even if the person is just wanting to learn more about the services, they can contact me, and then I can connect them to our intake person.
I've done a lot of podcasts on all different types of trauma, counseling, therapy, etc. this is a first for me. I've never spoken with somebody who does counseling and therapy and such, but also specializes in chronic health counseling. And we need it.
We need it. We need
for sure.
Yeah.
Angela, thank you so much for being here today. Looking forward next time we get together.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise. We'll be right back.
This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.